Welcome to Pod of Jake, a podcast hosted by Jake. You can go to zerofjake.com to learn more about Jake and everything that he does, and feel free to email him anytime at jake@blogofjake.com or message him at zerofjake on Twitter or at Jake on Warpcast. Anyway, we thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, please consider giving Pod of Jake a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mike, for coming on the show. It's great to have you. You are the founder and CEO of Rainbow, one of the most popular wallets in crypto. I personally use Rainbow Wallet and love it. It's really user-friendly, and if I had one word to describe it, probably it'd be fun. It's just like a nice wallet to use. It's good to be in there, and it's fun to play around. It's not like clunky and all that sort of older generations of crypto wallets became, I guess, infamous for. But for those who don't know you and don't know Rainbow, it'd be great to kind of hear your story, and if you're willing, from as early as you're willing to start, to where you are today, and talk through some of the decisions you made along the way.
Of course, man. Jake, thanks for having me. Honored to be here. Yeah, I guess I'm willing to go all the way back. I guess let me think. I'm Mike Rainbow. I grew up in suburban Massachusetts. I went to public schools. I have had a job. I was working since the age of I think 13. I think I was working illegally, like a year younger than I was meant to.
What were you doing at
So
13?
I grew up. I was a dishwasher at my uncle's restaurant.
Nice.
Yeah. So let me think. I guess I've always been a computer kid. I can distinctly remember sort of the moment that I got into computers, which was like I had to call customer support once for some silly children's video game I was playing. And I felt so stupid when I called customer support because the solution was so easy that I made a promise to myself that hey, you know what? I'm never going to do that again. I'm just going to figure it out. So that kind of got me into computers. I, am self-taught programmer. I got into making websites. My parents would never buy me a computer, so I would sort of solicit old computers from people we knew, and I would kind of Frankenstein build computers out of all of those parts. And those computers sucked, so I had to run Linux on them for them to be usable, right? Just because they had such bad hardware that they were so slow that I had to use Linux, and that I think definitely helped me further kind of up my computer skills and kind of go deeper in the rabbit hole. I think that so I've always been a computer kid. I very much grew up on the internet, was very early to Twitter. I don't know, I was probably 15 or something when I got on Twitter, and became really sucked into Twitter in particular. And I think that, I've always sort of found my own path, and, really just by kind of being on the internet all the time. Let me think, I guess, so I went to public high school. I was a weird student where, I like to think I'm a smart kid, but I just, wasn't interested in school, and sort of the game that school is, right? So I really only applied to one college when I was in high school, and it was in Canada. And I didn't submit my passport with the application, so I didn't get into that college. But yeah, basically, I never really was planning on going to college. I ended up going for 6 months to a sort of local state school that still had rolling admissions open. But I didn't last there very long. I kind of had an identity crisis and was like, what the hell am I doing here? But yeah, I guess so I've always been into tech. I sort of have followed startups and products the way that, my little brothers would follow sports, right? So I sort of have this encyclopedic knowledge of apps and startups and sort of business models and things like this. So I've always been attracted towards that stuff. But, again, I grew up in suburban Mass and had no connections to the tech world. So no one I knew was involved in tech. My parents sort of for a very long time did not realize that the stuff I was doing on my computer was like productive and cool and sort of beneficial to me. So it was not really fostered or like encouraged. It was eventually, but I guess so. I really had to find my own way into tech, and I guess the way I did that was, well, so first it's like I dropped out of college and then I started like a computer repair shop in my hometown, where we would fix people's computers or like make websites for local businesses, that kind of stuff. That was an amazing learning experience. Just like I think the real thing I learned then was almost like salesmanship and like, customer service and sort of like um interacting with people kind of like in a real professional capacity. Um, you know, so I started that computer repair, but I don't know, I was probably like 18 or something, 19. Before that, I had worked at like restaurants and uh, food service or retail. But those don't teach you all that much because you're not representing yourself, right? There's no like your reputation's not really on the line.
Right.
You don't have any skin in the game. So
Was the
that computer repair shop
computer
was,
was the
yeah.
computer repair like a one-man show, or were you working with other guys, or getting interns or anything like that?
Good question. Yeah. So I started it with a buddy of mine who was in college, so he wasn't really around that much. Um, but really, so the thing was run with me and another friend of mine from my hometown, who was really the only other kid like in the whole high school who was good at computers. So he and I sort of were like the two primary, uh, you know, people working. But we also did hire a couple of other high school kids as well from our town to help like make runs, like deliveries, right, or to kind of uh, perform kind of simple automated steps involved in like the repair process of people's computers and stuff. Um, but yeah, so that was super cool. Became really good friends with that kid who was working with me. His name is Derek. Um, and after, doing the computer repair shop for a bit, uh, it was, that's not really tech, right? That's not really entering tech. Like I was doing computer stuff, but I was in the suburbs. It was sort of not glamorous, sort of not a real startup per se. It was like a micro business. Um, so at some point I decided, I want to get experience working at real tech companies. So I started just cold calling, cold emailing startups in Boston that seemed cool to me, right? So I just went to, I don't know, I even remember what websites I went to, right? But I just sort of tried to aggregate like all of the startups in Boston. Went down the list. I found the ones that seemed most interesting to me, and I wrote like tailored uh, you know, cold emails to the founders of those startups and ended up just pretty quickly, almost instantaneously landing like a generalist intern role at this company in Boston called Privy. And it was awesome. So I was like, and I don't even remember how long I was like, interning there, but I did everything from like, you know, I was like taking photos and like, for their marketing materials and sort of updating their website and sort of going to like they would have like, seminars and things like this as part of their go-to-market strategy. And I would like go and help out and stuff. And that was an amazing experience. It really kind of introduced me to um, I don't know, everything from different types of roles at startups, but also so that startup was in an accelerator in Boston,
Right.
and I got to meet a bunch of other companies there. It was just really kind of my first hands-on experience, like in the tech world at all, right? Um, so that was awesome. I was doing that for a bit, and then my friend Derek and I, the kid who was really, uh, you know, the main guy with me at the computer repair shop. He and I started working on like a project for fun, like a side project that ended up becoming, a startup where so he was in college at the time. He went to like Boston University. So after my day of hard interning at Privy, I would go over to his dorm and we just chill in the lobby and basically work on this side project of ours. We were trying to build like a web app that let kids customize 3D printable toys. We were like, it was sort of really early days of 3D printing, and it sort of seemed to us like, wow, like every 6 months the 3D printing tech is going to get better and better, and like everyone's going to have a 3D printer like in their house within a couple years. You know what I mean? It was like, so we were like,
Well, and you're in
we
this
were,
like Boston tech scene too, where it's like probably more like hardware focused. Like you're just
it
sort of
is,
stepping foot into this tech scene, and it's the Boston tech scene, and
yeah,
people are talking about 3D printers, so it kind of makes sense.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're right. It is, Boston sort of does have like a lot of hard tech companies, right? Like robotics and shit like that because of MIT. But that's sort of another aspect of it, right? Is like actually growing up in Massachusetts, being so close to Boston, I think that Boston is a particularly hard city to break into tech in, because of Harvard and MIT, right? So it's like if if you go to Harvard or MIT, like maybe this is just a false assumption of mine, right? But it sort of seems like if you don't have those credentials or like that, it's just like the people with those credentials, it's like have a lot easier time like networking and navigating the city, sort of being in that scene and not being associated with those institutions. It felt like I was a real outsider at a disadvantage.
Right.
But yeah, so like my boy and I, we were started working on this app, and eventually I kind of just made like a YOLO life decision to move to Kansas City and sort of focus on building this side project full time. So I ended up moving to Kansas City to live in what's called a hacker house, because I had seen it on Hacker News. So there was like this guy who bought a house in Kansas City and was just going to let people live in it for free. So I was like, hell yeah, let's go. I was always obsessed with kind of America's like secondary and tertiary cities, places like Detroit, places like just like the Midwest and sort of Rust Belt.
Right.
To me, I've always found those places like really inspiring from a perspective of like being almost like a blank canvas in a lot of ways, or just having just immense. I just see places like Detroit, and all I see is opportunity. So when Kansas City felt close enough to Detroit thematically that I decided to just get on a plane and fly there and live there. So I stayed at the Hacker House for 6 months, and then ended up convincing my boy Derek and two other friends of ours to move out to Kansas City and try to do this as a company. What sort of made that make sense was they have this thing in Kansas City called the Kauffman Foundation, which it's like a nonprofit NGO type thing that's all about entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Like that's their mandate. And what that really meant though was like, when I moved to Kansas City, there's literally a guy, Cameron Cushman, shout out Cameron Cushman, who worked for the Kauffman Foundation, it seemed to me like his job for like 2 weeks was to literally do nothing but introduce me to everybody in the city of Kansas City. So it was like, they care so much about entrepreneurship there in Kansas City that like, if you show up at their doorstep and you're like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, they're trying to like, lock you in. They want you to stay there. They want you to be part of it. Right. So basically I got super networked in Kansas City. I met everybody there, would like know the mayor, like the mayor knew my name and all this cool shit. And that was a big reason why we ended up moving there. It just kind of felt like an awesome sort of set of resources. And I guess it also, in stark contrast to Boston, it felt like really inclusive,
Yeah.
right? Where basically like they didn't care at all about my credentials. They just wanted to basically help, right? So we went there because it just seemed like we could learn a lot here from these people, and also that just basically like we could kind of be bigger fishes in this small pond over here in Kansas City instead of in Boston.
Yeah.
So I was there for a while. We lived there for 2 years. Startup ended up kind of just like failing. 3D printing was not on the sort of exponential growth curve that we had expected. But fundamentally, it was an amazing learning experience. It only further sort of bolstered my kind of like, you know, speaking skills, my salesmanship, sort of like, you know, business skills, etc. You know, it was the first time I ever like raised money for something. At the time, we raised like $150,000. It felt like the biggest thing of all time. But yeah, I guess ever since then, and sort of up until Rainbow, I had been working for various uh, uh, like B2B SaaS companies, essentially. So after my startup in Kansas City died, right? Like I moved back to Boston and I was looking for a job. Again, sort of like didn't really know how to do that. But just figured it out, just kind of like took interviews, kind of faked it till I made it. I definitely did not have like as well-rounded of a sort of like I did not have my programming skills in a super professional, well-rounded place. I was really good at what I was good at, but I sort of like faked my way through the process and ended up becoming amazing at all of the things. But just sort of needed to get my foot in the door. And from that point up until Rainbow, I was really sort of focused on learning and trying to work with people who I thought were significantly better than me at things, and to basically like learn from them. So I really didn't care what the company I was working at like was doing, or like, you know, the product or like, you know, the vertical, as much as I cared about who I was working with, and whether or not I felt like I was like learning a lot from them. So I ended up sort of jumping around a few companies there for a number of years, and at some point I just became too obsessed with crypto to really be a productive member of some of these companies, right? So I basically quit and went full time into crypto in 2018.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the story and definitely want to dig into a couple pieces there. But
Yeah,
first, you know, it's interesting you talk about this like sort of bullishness on secondary and tertiary cities, the
yeah,
Detroits and, you know, Rust Belt and ultimately Kansas City for you. Um, I didn't really have that, like, or at least I didn't have that for a long time. And then when COVID hit and I sort of started to appreciate the all the impacts of that, I became like super bullish on like all of these secondary, tertiary cities, like you know, Charleston or
yep.
basically all the ones we talked about. And you know, the thing is, there's a long list of them. Because it's the tier
Yeah, they're not all the
below.
same. Some of them are a lot, you know, like Bozeman, Montana, like
Yeah.
beautiful, lovely, like let's go. You're not, there's no struggle, right? But it's a very different thing than Detroit, definitely
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, so I'm curious, like, did COVID and all of that change? Like, did your bullishness even accelerate through all that with just the concept of like, you know, you don't need to live in San Francisco to work for a company based in San Francisco anymore or something like that?
Yeah, it definitely did. I almost even think it like it further radical like COVID made me almost even want to like live in a really rural place more so than even a tertiary city. Like COVID got me, you know, thirsting for like wide open spaces of like Wyoming and stuff like that, right? Just
Yeah.
like I was,
What's
you know, for COVID I was trapped in New York and
what's what's the
was
team like
daydreaming.
with Rainbow? Sorry to interrupt, but what like
Yeah.
are you guys
No.
remote? Are you all a lot of you guys are in New York or what's like the structure?
Yeah, so uh uh we're a remote first company. We used to have an office here in New York. I ended up getting rid of it like I don't know, maybe a year ago or so, just because it really wasn't being utilized and just like why you know just cut unnecessary expenses, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean we have a bunch of people here in New York. Also have a couple of people on the West Coast. Um, you know, team is always you know evolving and changing. At this point, though, I think we have maybe one person in Europe, and then let me think. I guess 3 or 4 people in South America.
Hmm. Nice. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
basically you can work at Rainbow and live anywhere you want. If you want to go live in Wyoming, you can go live in Wyoming.
Yep. 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 And it's something that I think, you know, I get tempted by literally every day I'm like, shit, why am I still paying this much to live in New York? Like I should just move to Wyoming already.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of this sort of seasonal living concept that I've called it, which is like,
Yeah,
you can go to Wyoming for maybe like a month or two out of the year and then kind of see how that goes, like try it on. And the challenging part is like, subletting your unless you want to eat the double rent, you have to sublet your place in New York,
yeah,
which can be like a little tough, but it's kind of
yeah,
doable. And I just think like basically people realized with COVID that you don't have to live in New York to work in finance anymore. You don't have to live in San Francisco to to work in tech anymore. You don't have to live in this one place where your office is. But I think people haven't quite I think there's like this second impact that people haven't really figured out yet, that you actually don't have to live in one place at all. Like that's the way
yeah,
that mortgages are set up. And that's the way, obviously if you buy a house, you're incentivized to live there all the time. But I don't think there's any, like, I think there's this middle ground between, living in one place, renting in one place, and doing like the full on digital nomad thing, which is like appealing to some people, but it's like kind of like, it's appealing for a stretch of time. I think for most people, it kind of gets old. But like there's this middle ground of like maybe you spend 3 months here, 6 months here, and 3 months maybe doing more of a nomadic thing. And that can be like sort of a regular annual schedule where like you have multiple places that actually feel like home. Like you might have a community in Brooklyn and you also have a community in Wyoming, something like that.
that's the dream. I guess I just knowing myself and my brain chemistry, I am not compatible with the digital nomad lifestyle, even though I find it attractive and like I wish I could do it. I just am a very like I'm, super ADD, like I'm very momentum driven. So sort of like changing my environment, it has a huge impact on my like sort of productivity or the sort of consistent output or a
Yeah.
consistency of my output. Um, that said though, I do think I could like do something like what you're describing. Like, the dream for me is something like uh, you know, yeah, like have a freaking compound, a bunker or something out there in Wyoming, and then kind of dip uh every few months like back to New York kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just kind of split my time. That'd
I
be
like
that's the dream.
I feel like you're like one step beyond me on the spectrum where like COVID brought me from like, wanting to live in New York to like wanting to live in like more of these secondary cities and maybe like a Wyoming. And you're like, I want to be in Wyoming and I want to have a bunker. And like
I want to have a
that's what
bunker.
it's got to be.
I want like yeah, like I want to be able to like shoot guns in the air and not bother anybody. Like I just kind of like I just am so yeah, like thirsty for wide open spaces, like complete freedom, just kind of like big skies, just hang out with my dog, just kind of
Yeah.
like really just like
Yeah, no,
zen vibes.
I think it's
I
a
still love
common.
cities and stuff, but yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's a common thing. I think that's like the digital nomad not really working with your brain chemistry, like you said. Like I think that's most people. Like it's hard to you need to sort of like settle in and have your routines and like be able to not think about things in order to actually think about and work on the thing that you want to work on. So you need to spend at least like in my view probably 2 or 3 months somewhere for like a given stretch in order to like for it to make sense for like the setup costs and like the close down costs to sort of amortize over that stretch to where like yeah it cost you a couple weeks of like being productive to maybe get into your routines in Wyoming, but then like you have 3 months to work hard there with probably like way less distraction than New York or whatever, and maybe it turns into like well worthwhile. But anyway, you were talking
exactly.
about 2018 was really like when you got into crypto.
Yeah,
How did that happen? Like at the time you were working with these companies and then you just kind of
yeah,
got too distracted by crypto to basically do your day job.
yeah,
So like what was the story
yeah.
there?
Like, yeah, I guess, I'd always been watching crypto. Like I don't know, man. Like I'm not gonna I'm not even gonna pretend like I remember exactly when I sort of discovered Bitcoin and first started paying attention to it. It definitely was because of Hacker News back in the day. But for a long time, I sort of assumed that this crypto stuff is like like it's just not going to work, or that there's like some fundamental flaw, or that like one day you're going to wake up and like it's all broken. There's like some critical flaw or something, right? Um, so I didn't really pay a ton of attention to it. I also, when Ethereum came out, I didn't understand it. I was like, it felt like so, um, complex that it could like never work,
Right.
or something like that. Like I just sort of was like, there's too much going on. This seems like insanely ambitious and just therefore not possible. But when 2018 was happening, a couple of things happened that really, I think, shifted my perspective. So one was the seeing like the retail mania of the 2017 run up. It made me realize that crypto is never going to go away. It simply had gotten way too big for this to just stop existing, right? Like from a government regulation perspective, it just felt clear that like this stuff is not going to ever go away, and there's nothing anyone can do about that. And that sort of conviction about the sort of like long-term future of crypto and its continued existence was, I think, the major driving factor in me jumping in. I also, though, to me, okay, so there have been a couple of times in my life where where there was like a clear paradigm shift happening, and you know, uh, I had kind of fumbled those a couple of times where it's like I had the chance, right, to like get into iOS development when the iPhone came out, but I was like, nah, like whatever, I'm gonna do this other thing.
Mm.
And every time that I missed one of those opportunities, I really regretted it. I was like, damn, I was early, I was there, I was looking at the thing, and I just decided not to pursue it. And I realized sort of, yeah, like what I was missing out on, right? So I I identified crypto as being like a nascent industry that is here to stay and also doesn't have like a ton of experts yet. And it dawned on me that hey, I can jump into this and I can be an expert in this in a couple of years. So yeah, I didn't want to let another opportunity slip by. So yeah, I just jumped in.
And how did you arrive at like, I'm going to go and build Rainbow? Was it from day one? It was, I'm going to go build like more of a fun, user-friendly wallet, or did you think of other things of ways that you could plug into crypto, or
Yeah.
maybe you actually did experiment with some other things before?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Even though before I was saying, I'd worked at all these B2B SaaS companies, and it's true, I didn't really care about what the product was, but I did care a lot about like making whatever the product was like awesome, right? So like I cared a lot about the design, and I cared a lot about sort of the product thinking itself. And so when I made the jump to crypto, those were the two things that I really prioritized, right? I wanted to find people to work with who valued product thinking and design outcomes as much as I did. And so I definitely did not set out to found a company. What I did, so my journey to crypto started with uh, trying to find projects that had those values of product and design. And the one I ended up joining was this company called Balance, which really was sort of the predecessor to Rainbow. So in 2018, I joined this company called Balance, and we started building what has become Rainbow essentially. So at Balance, we started building a mobile wallet, and the mobile wallet was GPL open source, which is the most permissive open source license. And after, I don't know, maybe like 10 months or a year or so, there were some problems at Balance in the leadership. Basically, the company had like run out of funding, and like there were some personal like conflicts and things happening.
Right.
And basically the company ran out of money, and you know, Christian, Jin, and myself, uh, uh, who were basically three of the four people working at Balance, we didn't want to stop. Like we felt like we were really onto something. We really enjoyed building this mobile wallet. We felt like it was really uh, obvious to us how large of an opportunity there was in being sort of the consumer facing interface for this whole world of crypto. Um, uh, so it was like a huge opportunity, and also the the products in the market at that time were just like really bad, right? Like it felt really clear to us that wow, this crypto thing is real, it's going to be a thing, but damn, like the wallet products in the market today look like developer tools. They look like VLC player does, right? Like it's sort of, these products are never going to end up on my little brother's home screen, for example. So we really wanted to be that product. And so when Balance essentially died, we, we basically created a new entity, Rainbow, and continued building the product that we had been building previously. And we were very lucky to be able to do that because all of the source code we had written was GPL open source. So basically, we were able to do that very seamlessly. So that's kind of the origin story of Rainbow. Christian, Jin, and I founded Rainbow, in 2019. And it's sort of been having fun ever since.
It's a great story. And what were like the first inflection points where you started to like really get users? Like, what was there something that you did with the product or like a marketing effort or something like that?
I don't even remember. I'm gonna say I don't know. Maybe so I think that one thing was, so we had we were one of the first, actually the first wallet product that sort of treated NFTs as first-class citizens in the product. And what we mean by that is like we had NFTs sort of like in your wallet view, not hidden behind any taps, right? And the goal was to sort of like make your NFTs look good, right? Like that was our, people pay money for these items. They, cherish them, but all of the wallet products made those NFTs just look real bad, right?
And
and I think that Rainbow's,
was this before like when most people got into NFTs, or you guys were building this around the time? Yeah, it was like before like Bored Apes and stuff like that.
The only NFT that had literally any relevancy when we were building NFTs into Rainbow was CryptoKitties. And even then it was like already over, like no one cared about them.
Right.
And at the time, right, like, VCs who we'd be pitching would be telling us that we're like super dumb for putting any time into supporting NFTs at all. But it was super clear to us that like, hey, actually, no, like this is fundamentally one of the core, token standards. Like, of course, people are going to do things with these that are not predictable right now, right? So I think a core insight we always had at Rainbow was that, Ethereum token standards are themselves the developer platform, and that as long as you support the relevant token standards, you can build a product that sort of has emergent properties, right? Like as people do new things or unexpected things with those token standards, you're already positioned to sort of have, for your product to be useful to that new use case, right? Without even knowing the use case ahead of time. So I would say that the NFT boom brought in a lot of users to Rainbow because of just our kind of, at the time, like, we were really like stood out, we really stood out as being, I think, the clear best experience for NFT collectors at the time. And since then, obviously, wallet companies have realized the importance of NFTs and sort of integrated them into their products as deeply as we initially had.
And then there's also, Rainbow Kit, which probably put you on the map for like a lot of developers as well. Was that like sort of coming at the market from like a different angle?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, so Rainbow Kit has been a huge success. It's still the most widely adopted and popular developer SDK in the market for adding a Connect wallet experience to your app. And we initially created Rainbow Kit really to just solve our own users' problems, right? So, again, I'm a lifetime Twitter addict, and we sort of, there was a point in time in the last bull market where every day you would open Twitter and you would see, whether it's an artist, a creator, whoever, posting a link to some random NFT mint that they had just made, and these were like popping off, right? Like this wasn't random. It's like people really wanted to interact with this stuff. What we noticed was happening though is that the vast majority of these like mint pages that people would be posting on Twitter, if you loaded them, the only way to connect your wallet it was often MetaMask, right? And that felt so that created real problems for Rainbow users, right? Because if you're on your phone, you click one of these mint pages that you found on Twitter. If the only way to connect was MetaMask, right, that literally prevented Rainbow users from interacting with all of these dApps that people were kind of making all the time. And what we realized was it wasn't that these people making these mint pages like loved MetaMask or anything, or like wanted to sort of exclusively support MetaMask. We realized that it's just like, hey, these people are artists. They're good at making art. They're not good at setting up Wallet Connect or sort of all of the like associated kind of boilerplate behind creating one of these good mint websites. So it was clear to us that, hey, like, listen, if we just build like the dumbest, simplest possible sort of package where we can just completely remove the whole like learning curve or technical challenge that typically goes into building one of these mint pages, that it would just dramatically increase or improve the experience for Rainbow users. So we set out to build RainbowKit, and I guess it started with trying to solve user problems, again, just making most of these websites like more accessible to Rainbow users on mobile. But then we also quickly realized how strategically advantageous RainbowKit is, right? So it fundamentally, like by default, puts Rainbow at the top of the list of wallets, which is really awesome for us. And fundamentally, being a wallet company, it's important that users who are interacting with dApps are able to connect your brand's wallet to that dApp. And before RainbowKit, typically the kind of way that wallets would do that is like direct outreach, right? Or sort of like reaching out to dApps and asking them nicely to like add your wallet to their list of 12 already existing wallet buttons or whatever, right? And with RainbowKit, we kind of flipped that whole process upside down, where instead of reaching out and begging people to add a rainbow button, we instead just dramatically improved the developer experience around that core, like that widget itself. And essentially like instead of reaching out and asking everyone, we kind of permissionlessly and like almost like in a guerrilla sense got Rainbow added to all these websites just by kind of building this awesome open source tool. So that was definitely a big source of Rainbow's growth, without a doubt. Let me think. I guess other than that, I think that there have been there have been a couple of, when we first shipped our Uniswap integration, I think that was another big moment that brought in a lot of users back in the day.
To be able to swap direct in the wallet.
Yeah, like Rainbow's the first wallet to integrate like a direct Uniswap integration back in the day. We had integrated Uniswap with V1, and by the time we perfected our integration, Uniswap V2 had come out already, and it had a completely different API. So it's like by the time we perfected our V1 integration, it's like it was basically already obsolete, and we had to start over.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you guys were early on like a few different pretty core things. Like, first of all, you came at it with a different philosophy of like, let's make this fun, let's make this user friendly. And then you were early on mobile first, or really the first on mobile first. Very early on NFTs, really the first to present NFTs in a good way. And then took a very different, and then the swaps we just talked about, but then took a very different strategy for getting your wallet featured, which was just building the best Wallet Connect like sort of developer tool and getting that out there. So you're actually giving something to the companies rather than asking for something. And then you can obviously not only ensure that Rainbow connects to that, but you can make it the number one option. So like all of these decisions seem really strong, and it's no surprise that you guys have been able to, build the momentum that you have. One of the more recent things you guys did was you launched this, well, for a while you've had this point system, right? And recently you sort of flipped it so that now people are actually earning ETH on a weekly basis based on stuff that they're doing anyway. You just basically anything they do with their Rainbow wallet is just earning them this amount of ETH that at the end of every week or whatever, they can go and they can claim it. And I've heard you talk about like this claim button as like the highest dopamine button in maybe in the internet in total. And I totally agree. It's basically just,
I think it might be.
It's just get some money, click this button and get money. So what was like sort of the the thought behind the design? Because like a lot of other projects are doing like, you know, airdrops of like their own tokens or something like this. Like you guys said, let's just give them ETH. Let's do it on a weekly basis. Just be pretty upfront about it. How did you like, did
Yeah.
you draw on different projects, inspiration from crypto projects to credit cards or whatever? Like how'd you come up with the final design there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely drew inspiration from existing sort of like almost like Web2 type uh, playbooks, right? Like credit card points, airline miles, things like this. But also took more direct inspiration from crypto projects like Blur and Friendtech and even like Mint.fun had a points program that was like sort of influential in ours. So yeah, I think that, listen, I mean, fundamentally, um, from the beginning, we've wanted to like Rainbow has been about like fun. Like fun is a very high priority for us, like in our products. And we've always felt like crypto is fundamentally fun, and that sort of playing with crypto is the best way to learn as well. So from the beginning, we've always envisioned kind of like layering in aspects of gamification into the Rainbow product. And points was sort of us kicking that off. And so, yes, we launched Rainbow ETH Rewards, which is really phase one out of the three phases here in our end game vision. And with ETH Rewards, our goal here, or I guess the core intent, was to try to get to a place where essentially, yeah, like users simply by using the product could like make some money. I think that was truly one of the big breakthrough things for me about Friend Tech initially, was how Friend Tech fundamentally, like as a user of Friend Tech, by default, you make money. Like even if you're talking about like it only being 5 cents, it's like when you create a Friend Tech account, some bot is like gonna snipe your key immediately, and then you make like the 5 cents or whatever it was in the fee. And I that to me was like this really powerful thought, right? Like by default, can users like just make money by being a user of your product? And that was kind of the driving intention here with ETH Rewards. Now, the ETH Rewards that exist today is really just the beginning, and we do plan on making tweaks to ETH Rewards, and also really our goal is to broaden the program. Right now, it's basically the top 1,000 most active users per week uh, split sort of a chunk of ETH across them. Our goal is to really get that number up, right? So as Rainbow continues to grow, continues to be, ever more successful, we want to really like our goal is to, as rapidly as possible, expand that audience. Like ideally, right? Like we want really every Rainbow user to be part of this program. It's just at the time being, it's hard to sort of make that exciting for everybody, because if you're if you are number 250,000 in the list, right? Like getting a 1,000th of a penny is like not actually exciting for people. So we needed to restrict it to kind of keep the program viable in the beginning. But we definitely plan on expanding it. And yeah, I think the other sort of intention behind ETH Rewards was like really just like trying to help people stack ETH, frankly, right? We're big believers in Ethereum. We're big believers in ETH, the asset, as being like an extremely compelling form of money, like hard money. So we think it's like really important that people stack ETH. And something that Bitcoiners actually do really well is promote this kind of like DCA, or just like stack sats mentality, right? And I think that often that's actually something that the Ethereum scene doesn't really have, where there's people are chasing NFTs and like meme coins, etc., and forgetting to secure their bag, right? So that was a big part of this as well. Is like we just want to help people get more ETH, even if sort of the ways that they earn that ETH is by, aping all of their money around in meme coins, right? So even if you're sort of fully denominated in meme coins, we want to make sure that you, at the end of the day, still have some ETH. So that was a big factor as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. You guys are like, obviously you can do a ton of super high risk stuff with the Rainbow wallet. You can swap into as many meme coins and buy as many NFTs as
Yeah,
you want. But as you're doing that, you're actually earning like the least risky asset on Ethereum, which is ETH itself. So, I mean, with Bitcoin, it makes
exactly.
sense. Like you're stacking Bitcoin because like you're not really spending Bitcoin a lot. So it's kind of just like a one-way hose that like if
Yep.
you add little by little, the balance is adding. But with ETH, to your point, it's like much more dynamic. And I think it's gonna be interesting. Like Bitcoin was always far easier for me to understand. Like you said, with your initial impression of Ethereum, it's like just so complex. It's really hard to like wrap your head around. And even if you're not technical and you're just thinking about it at like a high level, like Bitcoin is so easy to explain. It's just like, okay, this is
Yep.
digital gold. Ethereum, to the extent that it's going to be like quote unquote money, it's a money that looks very different from past money. It's not as easily analogous to gold or something like that. And so it's just difficult. You can't see the future. It's just difficult to sort of understand. But I'm very sympathetic to the idea that like it can be money just as much as Bitcoin can be money. And
Yeah.
maybe there's not any longer one form of money. And currently, there's 100 whatever fiat currencies. Maybe there will be, a dozen cryptocurrencies or whatever, and they're all considered money or whatever. And maybe the fiat currencies like sort of conform to one or two like fiat denominated stable coins or something like that. And that's sort of like the transition of money that we see or something like that. Who knows? But at the very least, I think stacking Ethereum is a pretty good idea. And you guys enabling that is certainly a good thing. I know we're coming up on time and I want to, wrap things up without going over, but last words, I want to ask you about Farcaster. You've been a diehard Twitter guy
Yeah.
for a very long time. We met
Yeah.
on Farcaster, arranged this podcast through the DMs on Farcaster. What's your thoughts on like where Twitter is and where it's going versus Farcaster and the fun that you're having over there?
Yeah, I guess it's hard, man. So yeah, I mean, there was a point in time where uh I seriously could imagine, like, I was so obsessed with Twitter that I was like, man, even if my life goes to shit, like I would be happy just being a missionary, spreading the word about Twitter, right? And just like the impact it can make on your life. Just sort of being active on Twitter. So I've truly been a huge like believer and addict of Twitter for a very long time. Now, there have been, yeah, a lot of changes at Twitter. I think that the vibe has fundamentally shifted. And there's tends to be a lot more noise and spam there now. The algorithmic changes tend to like mess with the type of content that sort of I used to value most there, I think. And as well, like the I don't know, Twitter as a platform, just like, okay, there was I don't know if this is too inside baseball, but like, so a lot of startups, Rainbow, one of them, in order to power your customer support teams, you'll use different apps. A very popular one is called Front app. It lets people on your customer support team kind of so say you have like 5 people on your support team, like, and there's one Twitter account that's getting DMs, right? It sort of lets multiple people kind of manage that flow.
Right.
And at some point within the last, like, I don't know, 1 or 2 years, Twitter like nuked their algorithm. I'm sorry, Twitter nuked their API and sort of the rules of how the API works and the pricing for it. And that literally like completely broke Rainbow's customer support workflow. And we like had to scramble to kind of create workarounds and like really band-aid over that problem. And that to me is like the most acutely like uh shitty thing that's happened to Twitter. Like that fundamentally made me lose a lot of like, I don't know, goodwill or sort of like benefit of the doubt to Twitter to a degree. And I very much um like, so compared to that, right? Farcaster is like the freaking holy grail, right? So it's like the ultimate developer platform, where developers have complete agency and autonomy to sort of build clients, infrastructure, tooling as they see fit. And to me, I guess, sort of, I am good at pattern matching, and so it's like before we were kind of talking like, oh, Rainbow is like early to this and that. Like to me, um, uh, I when I see what's like a developer platform like Farcaster, I see the like engagement that developers have with it and sort of the things building on it and sort of the ecosystem evolving there. I just have like, to me, it's like such an obvious signal of future success and adoption. So it's like I feel like that's happened in the past with things like ENS and even with like Wallet Connect or things like even NFTs and like as a token standard, right? That sort of if you like the developer centricity of Farcaster gives me a lot of confidence in its future existence, right? And confidence that like you can build on top of this foundation without having to worry about getting rugged the way that like Front essentially got rugged by Twitter, right? So Farcaster is the most exciting thing in my mind happening in the sort of industry in the last 2 years, I would say. It's just endlessly interesting to me. I'm so excited about the ways that we're going to be integrating Farcaster into Rainbow, sort of like both on sort of the data side of things, but also in sort of building out more social elements into Rainbow itself. But yeah, man, like Farcaster's been great, having a lot of fun there. As a brand, Rainbow's trying to become much more Farcaster first. So it's like I've given the mandate to our growth team. It's like all of our sort of public comms need to go out on Farcaster first. Like even if it's only like by a minute, like we should be putting it out on Farcaster first.
Yeah.
So yeah, just super excited about all of the energy over there on Farcaster. And yeah, just honestly like truly think that it is the kind of breakthrough paradigm of this cycle in my mind.
Awesome.
Similar to
Well,
like how Uniswap was in the last.
yeah, no, I agree. I've been on Farcaster now for at least a couple of years, and it's been a ton of fun. And I started by just kind of like cross posting from Twitter, and then started becoming kind of the reverse, where I was like posting on Farcaster and trying to cross post that on Twitter, and then now I'm just kind of like doing a bunch of stuff on Farcaster and Twitter's just kind of like a second priority thing. So it's been a lot of fun. But anyway, I know you got to run. It's been an awesome conversation. Thank you again, Mike, for coming on the
Thanks
show.
for
It's been a
having me,
blast.
Jake. I appreciated the vibe of this and sort of yeah, man, I like this. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I
If
like
you want
it
to keep
too.
talking, we can get on again. We can sort of book round 2.
No doubt. All right, man. Well, thank you again. And go for those listening, go to rainbow.me, follow Mike on
Rainbow.me.
Twitter, but more importantly, go follow him on Farcaster.
Farcaster.
All right.
Yeah, and follow at Rainbow on Farcaster too.
Perfect.
Peace.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Talk to you
See you,
later.
man.